color commentary, and thanks for watching. I mentioned several months ago that I picked up a run of Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter at a local comic shop. Not a complete run, obviously, but or I mentioned in the video anyway. First 4 issues. Issue number 5 isn't in there, and then several issues following. But you know, this was one of those books that I was like, oh, cool, a neat little run of Bronze Age books. Picked those up, and something I've never read before. Okay, and thought, well, I'll give those a read. I didn't really expect, and maybe you're like this, but they were in the dollar box, so I didn't really expect. You know, I thought, well, if they're not that great, no big deal. They're Bronze Age. I'll be able to flip them. And right now, of course, issues 1 and issue 5, or issues 1 and 5, are hot. Issue 1, of course, being the first appearance of Richard Dragon and his buddy Ben something, I believe, who becomes the Bronze Tiger. And then issue 5 being the first appearance of Lady Shiva. Okay. Incidentally, issue 18 is the first appearance of the Bronze Tiger, of his buddy in costume. But so I thought this happened before I'd actually started reading them, and I thought, oh well, time to flip. Well, I started reading the first 4 issues, which is what I have, first, I mean, in a row, and I began really liking this book. And I think one of the reasons that I like it is because it reminds me of the old classic comic strips, newspaper strips, in part because the action just comes back to back to back. There's not a lot of time in between. There's not a lot of soliloquies by your characters or you know, and I like the thought balloons. They work in comic books, but in comic strips, you know, you just have, like, you know, you have action, and then you have the setup for the next bunch of action. And that's the way Kung Fu Fighter was, and I really enjoyed it. Written by Denny O'Neil. But here's what I wanted to kind of highlight. The first few issues, they kind of have a hard time finding finding a regular artist for the book before they finally settle on Rick Estrada. And Rick Estrada is an interesting figure in comic books. You've probably heard that name. If you've been reading comics for as long as I have, you've seen the name, you've seen some of his work. But Rick Estrada was originally from Cuba, and the interesting thing about him was that his transition to New York in 1947 was facilitated by his uncle, and no less than Ernest Hemingway. And so that's just kind of an interesting deal. Anyway, I wanted to highlight some of the art of the first few issues before they settled on Rick as the regular artist, and talk about that. So here we go. Okay, so here's issue number 1 of Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter, and really cool Dick Giordano cover. And when you open it up inside, what you have is art by Leopoldo Duragnona. Leopoldo Duragnona. Okay, I don't know who that is, but very odd to me. Different kind of art style at the very beginning. You know, the guys look very thick around the midsection. They're muscular and everything, and looks like it's a fairly action-oriented style, but just a little different. I'd never heard of the artist. Okay, but it's serviceable at least, and it is entertaining once you kind of get used to it. Any artist is like that. So anyway, that's issue 1. Then we have issue 2. Someone help me out. The artist here, he signed his name Vice. I don't know who that is, but very dynamic cover. Really cool. I like the cover. But when you open it up, what you have is some early Denny O'Neil wrote them all, of course. Jim Starlin and Alan Weiss, both artists who I like. But this was at least Jim Starlin's, some early Jim Starlin work. I don't know about Alan Weiss, when he started exactly. Someone might be able to help me out with that. But so it goes to a totally different art style, more detailed, I'm more favorable to this than I am to the artist on issue 1. But again, very dramatic, action-oriented, and just neat art style. So fit the book better than the first artist, I thought. And I thought, well, maybe this will be where they land for this book. But hang on, it gets different. So now we have issue 3, another great cover, I believe by Giordano. But this, I was in for a shocker when I opened up this book, because, boom, it is some Kirby, some very obvious Kirby and not very good Kirby. Now look, there's no lack of Jack Kirby love on my part. Okay, I love Jack Kirby. I've always respected and grew to love his art. But this just wasn't, I mean, if it can ever be said that Jack Kirby phoned something in, I really believe this is one of those times. And someone might, might say, well, you have to talk about who inked him. I don't know who D. Bruce Berry is. I know a lot of artists and inkers operated under different pseudonyms at different times, but, just not the best Kirby. And of course, Kirby's second wave, if you will, the 70s stuff that he did, wasn't always the best in my estimation. But you won't hear any New Gods fans say that. They loved Kirby's stuff at that time. But anyway, that was issue number 3. And then we come to issue number 4, and another great Giordano cover. I love the black in it. I wish this one didn't have any ticks along the spine, because it would make a beautiful black cover. But anyway, issue number 4, and in issue number 4, what we have Rick Estrada begins his run on this book, and it's fantastic. Rick Estrada, inked by Wally Wood, no less. And so this is where this is the groove that the book settles into. Art by Rick Estrada. Now, Wally Wood continues to ink for a few issues, but then you get various inkers on Estrada's artwork, which does affect the look of the book. But man, the Rick Estrada, Wally Wood, phase was fantastic. I loved it, and just really enjoyed the book, and what issues I have, I've enjoyed, and so I'm, despite the present hotness of certain issues of the book, I'm going to go on and try to assemble the entire 18-issue run, because I have most of them. So anyway, interesting art choices, and then finally settles on something great. So there you go. Kung Fu Fighter, kind of a rocky start art-wise, but interesting start. And while I don't usually like books like that where you just have different artist style each issue, very choppy, I like that okay, because the story drives it well enough that I could stay on it. But it was kind of it's kind of wild, especially from the Starlin Weiss to the Kirby change. It's like, whoa. And so anyway, but hey, it's a great book. If and after a while, I'm not giving up on getting every issue, because you know how this goes. Books stay hot for a while because a movie or an animated movie or another comic is being done, and after a while they cool off. And most of the time, they cool off to the point where you can find them again in dollar boxes. Just wait a year or two, maybe 3, maybe 4. But eventually, you'll find them cheap again. But anyway, thanks for watching. Just wanted to share that with you, and we'll see you again next video.